everybody, welcome to today's show. My name is Spencer Walsh. Thank you so much for joining us here today. We've got a good one for you as always. And we are starting with some very big news about the war in Ukraine, as I want to bring it to you, because it is very important and exciting. And good news for the Ukrainians here, because they have just completed a sweep into Kherson, I think it's called. As you can hear the sounds, actually I don't know if you can hear them, but the key thing is Russia is out, Ukraine is in. This is one of the cities that it was actually declared a month ago would be a pro-Ukrainian city. So it was really just kind of insane, frankly, to see it go this fast. It is really, it's really quite remarkable. So the fact that they are, the fact that they're doing this, the fact that they're at this place, really to show you a real large degree of how it's come. Also on the show, we will be talking about Republicans. They're reckoning with the midterm election fall. They may still win the House, but an underwhelming showing is the GOP really wrestling with what went wrong. Was it bad candidates, a bad message, and was that bad message from one person in particular? A lot of people do want to think so. So also another controversial decision on the Democrats' side that they, now looking at their position, are really going to be kicking themselves for. This is Newsflash. Welcome to the show, everyone. All right, so yeah, we're going to get into it today, and we're starting at the top with some big news out of Ukraine. And it is, very big. So they have taken the city of Kherson. I do want to play for you some of the sounds of what it sounded like, but unfortunately it is proving a little bit harder than I would have anticipated. But the thing is, they're very, very much jubilant scenes. People shouting, people cheering in the streets, soldiers taking selfies with all the people. Really kind of incredible moment after months and months of this Russian occupation. Jubilation has greeted the soldiers, and an explosion at a crucial bridge severed Kherson City's last major crossing, and Russia said it's completely withdrawn from the area. So this is all stuff that's been kind of reclaimed by Ukraine. So it's the southern area. It's right really by Crimea. This is some of the areas where Russia really felt for a long time had its strongest its strongest grip on that area in terms of occupation, and it really has shown that this is not the case at this point. So Ukraine's troops swept into the key southern city, and the move puts Kiev on the cusp of achieving one of its most significant victories in the war, and it deals a bitter blow to President Vladimir Putin, who just a month ago declared Kherson the Kherson region a part of Russia forever. So big oops there. Other videos, just all these videos, just tons of celebration, shouting, screaming, all in a good way, which is very, very good. So the Ukrainian military later warned Russia was preparing to strike the city from new positions across the river. A major bridge connecting the city of Kherson to the eastern bank was blown up in a massive explosion early Friday, residents said, severing the main transit route from Russian supplies coming in from Crimea and for Russians seeking to leave Kherson City. The loss of Kherson will be Russia's third major setback of the war, following retreats from Kiev, the capital, last spring, and of the Kharkiv region in northeast this past September. Kherson was the only provincial capital Russia had captured in invading in February, and was a major link in Russia's effort to control the southern coastline along the Black Sea, which is kind of, one of the things that they said, their kind of list of backtracking demands really was, they want to get a land bridge to Crimea, and Ukrainians have pretty much said, no, we want Crimea back, and that is a big deal there. The relatively few residents who remain in Kherson, they've endured curfew, shortage of goods, partisan warfare, and an intense campaign to force them to become Russian citizens and accept Moscow's warped version of their culture and history. The depths of their suffering has yet to come to focus, but for months, residents interviewed by journalists have told stories of friends being abducted, children illegally deported, which is really, really crazy. Some of this awful stuff that we, I think, haven't fully begin to process and really barely know anything about was the fact that we're starting to understand the fact that children have been deported out of Ukraine and deported out of these regions and sent into Russia for whatever purpose, we don't even know. So when Russians have pulled out elsewhere in Ukraine, evidence of human rights abuses have eventually surfaced. So that's something that is very disturbing to look for. The dramatic scenes in Kherson came less than 48 hours after Russia's defense minister announced that Russian troops in the city would withdraw. So I'm going to put you into, gives you an idea of what the situation here is, and it is, very much one that is definitely always changing, but for the most part, we're definitely seeing a significant trend, which is a real high amount of success when it comes to the Ukrainians. They're pushing, and they're pushing hard in a big way. So the dramatic scenes came less than 48 hours after Russia's defense minister announced Russian troops in the city would withdraw. They still, though, are holding to this fantasy of that it being part of Russia. It has been legally fixed and defined, said Dmitry Peskov, the Kremlin spokesperson. There can be no changes here. As he spoke, though, Ukrainian soldiers continued to move through the towns and regions, saying that they're leaving at night. So it's a really kind of big thing. I really want to see how they were able to do this, which is kind of a important thing to understand. But it is, the big thing it looks like was this severing this bridge, and really what it looks like has been, effective weapons, obviously, but also some really good strategy, and Russia just failing big time on the strategy part, which I think, as we hear these scenes of jubilation in the streets, it is really quite it's going to be interesting to see now how this obviously affects the policy conversation, like where this goes from here. And I think this would be probably one of the biggest cases for saying, we got to keep pushing. We're going to keep sending these weapons to Ukraine. They're so close. They're almost there, guys. They're making, these real gains. They made three straight massive retreats out of Russia in this year since the war has begun. And I think that's, definitely something you cannot, deny. And, the war has really had one major direction, but then again, how is this going to be resolved? And, I think this really, it strengthens the hand for the peace that should eventually come. And I think that is something that will be interesting to see how, the international community, in terms of their support for Ukraine, what influence they will have over the peace that comes. Obviously, first order of, factor, I think really is obviously how Ukraine continues to do on the battlefield. Second order, obviously, is kind of how Ukraine gets support and how the West processes Ukraine. It looked pretty dicey there for the moment, but the fact with Joe Biden kind of getting this big notch in his belt with the midterms and some kind of continued stability out of Great Britain, I think mostly they're going to be fine. U.S. continuing to send so much in terms of all sorts of aid, the real nature of which can't even pretend to understand at this moment. Getting very little in terms of input. But it's going to be interesting to see if they do try and obviously force their hand on that input front in the near future. But it's going to be hard to do if Ukraine keeps continuing to do this well. All right, let's move on now to our next story, continuing coverage of the midterms here today. And it's the Republicans. They're not doing well. They're saying their worst midterm performance by a party out of power in 2 decades, trading recriminations on party on Friday over whether the ultimate case was poor candidates, an overheated message, or the electoral anchor that appeared to be dragging the GOP down, former President Donald J. Trump. Honestly, I think it's all three. So, that is, and those things are related. That anchor is picking those poor candidates and dictating launch by that very much overheated message. Although that is something that is, I think, really coming from the message, the cultural war issues. That push is very, very foolish and short-sighted to say that that's only coming from Donald Trump. Democratic incumbents have won so far nearly all of their races, while Republicans have racked up surprising losses from Maine and Washington, while candidates endorsed by Trump losing the pivotal Senate contest in Pennsylvania and key House statewide races in Michigan, Ohio, North Carolina, and elsewhere. As a party, we found ourselves consistently navigating the power struggle between Trump and anti-Trump factions of the party. mostly within the donor class. Paul Cortez, the Michigan Republican Party's chief of staff, he wrote in a memo on Thursday. He continued to say that the power struggle ended with too many people on the sidelines and hurt Republicans' key races. At the end of the day, high-quality, substantive candidates and well-funded campaigns are still critical to winning elections. I think that is the big thing that the Republicans really, if they learned anything, that is what they learned from this, that you still have to, for the most part, be a normal person in politics from time to time, especially when Donald Trump is on the ballot, and especially when there's not all these kind of passions at play that he can bring to the table. It's really kind of remarkable to see how that turns out. And we saw this message where, in a lot of places where, there had been an improvement in the economy due to government action, which I think speaks a lot for people, even if their, inflation for the moment isn't that good. The Joe Biden messaging, and also places where there's a strong Democratic Party, and also places where abortion was on the ballot, they ended up doing really, really well. And Republicans they did not have any real answers for that kind of a message, and just shows you a real good and I think effective way of going all throughout. So this guy in Michigan, he had a rough night, Michigan Republican Party chief of staff. So we struggled in both regards to the detriment of Michiganders across the state. The first substantive battle for the party broke out in the shape of leadership in the next Congress, in both the House and the Senate. Jason Miller, who's helping to organize Trump's expected announcement next week that he will again seek the presidency, went on Steve Bannon's internet radio show on Friday and issued a veiled threat towards Representative Kevin McCarthy of California, the man who wants to be Speaker and whom Trump has called my Kevin. Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness. That is quite a... that is unbelievable. That voice just came out of me there. I don't know what happened. But if McCarthy wants to gavel, Miller said, he must be much more declarative that he supports President Trump in 2024. So, okay. It's going to be interesting to see how much of the base, sticks into what is a full, we've seen this type of assault before, but a full Murdoch press flip of the switch from Trump to DeSantis. The thing about this, I think that's different from times that they really kind of tried to distance themselves. After January 6th, they were really repulsed. They were like, this guy's too much, especially in the more respectable outlets. They really slammed him in that Humpty Dumpty cover yesterday in the New York Post. But when it comes down to it, the thing is they did not have, up until now, they did not have another face. They did not have another candidate. In 2016, they had a lot of other candidates, but, up until when, the times when they really been mad at him, they had no other vector to channel that energy. But will Ron DeSantis, as a political figure, be able to handle that? I really don't think so. I mean, I think you can never judge a candidate, or you never judge a political person when they're at their absolute best or they're at their absolute worst. You got to judge them based on the averages. And I think based on the fundamentals of what you can kind of really consistently see from Ron DeSantis, someone who just really is a kind of paper tiger. He's someone who looks very, very, and Republican paper tigers, and for poor people, for minorities, they have real teeth. It can be really, really bad, and that's something you got to avoid at all costs. It is really, really evil. But as an electoral threat in today's Republican Party compared to Trump, it's going to be very, very hard to see how he can make such a real dent, because he is going to have to be such a pale impersonation of Trump, or make a negative case, which is going to be so hard to do, because he literally built, Trump in his rage fit against Ron DeSantis the other day. It sounded really bad, but he was right about one thing. He did build Ron DeSantis' career. I remember when he ran against Andrew Gillum in 2018 for his first term, he released a video campaign ad of him reading The Art of the Deal and building a wall with his toddler son. And that, if that is not the essential fact of Ron DeSantis' political identity, it's hard to say what is. It is hard to say what is, because that is such, that's how, he builds his base. He's tried to distinguish it a little bit more. He's not really that guy anymore by any stretch. He's really, things have frozen up between the two camps now pretty significantly, but that still is a lot of the way. It's how people in the state and it's how people nationally understand him, as kind of a, my rod, for Donald Trump. I can't believe we called him that. It is really quite remarkable. So it is interesting. There's the civil war is abound here. There's really kind of complex back and forth. So, because we got Kevin McCarthy, he is under some pressure from Jason Miller to endorse Donald Trump right away if he wants a speakership, especially with that really kind of, and that the powerful people in that caucus, because it's going to be such a smaller than expected slim margin. They're not going to be the moderates. They're going to be people like Matt Gaetz, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Jesus Christ, and Lauren Boebert, if she comes back, which is still up for doubt. And I really do not think that they're going to learn anything, because that is not something that they can do. And I don't know how the GOP is going to get control over. I don't even know if they can control their own base. They just have to kind of find a way to kind of rein them in and kind of take them in a more respectable direction. But then each time they keep ripping off the restraints and saying, no, let's go more crazy, let's go more disconnected from not only just like normal policy, but just basic reality in it of itself. And that's not going to be stopping, I think, anytime soon. Even in the Senate, where control hangs in the balance, Senators Rick Scott of Florida and Ron Johnson of Wisconsin and Mike Lee of Utah circulated a letter asking for a delay in leadership elections amid calls from the former president to depose Senator Mitch McConnell of Kentucky as a Republican leader. They want to, wait till control of the Senate is at least in balance, I guess. And these are Trump allies, so, presumably they're trying to buy some time to marshal some support. These guys are probably not going to be big fans of Mitch McConnell, Ron Johnson, especially a Trump sycophantic type guy. So we were all disappointed that a red wave failed to materialize, and there are multiple reasons it did not. They wrote, we need to have serious discussions within our conference as to why and what we can do to improve our chances for 2024. Senator Marco Rubio, handily reelected to his seat in Florida, seconded the call. We need to make sure that those who want to lead us are genuinely committed to fighting for the priorities and values for working Americans of every background who gave us big wins in states like #Florida, quickly receiving the backing of Senators Ted Cruz and Cynthia Lummis of Wyoming. No idea who that person is. Wow. Someone I follow politics, I do not know who Cynthia Lummis is. But, she does represent Wyoming at the end of the day. So there you see it. The Trump allies, the people who are really kind of built their careers, whether they're Trump era careers. Before that they were definitely opposed to Trump when he was coming up, like Ted Cruz, obviously. But they are now saying, we need to do some time. We need to adjust. This is all people who want to plot, who want to do their machinations, and it's going to be very, very interesting because it all comes down to with the Republican Party in a way that it's never really been at all with the Democratic Party. Their base is so much more important for their for what they're able to do, and just who they can put in charge, because the base does just not care about electability. There's Republicans, people who are just saying this and they're realizing they're kind of freaking out because they care and they want their jobs, but they know that the base they couldn't care less. They care about fealty to Donald Trump. That is the psychological makeup of it. And and that's a majority. It's not all people, but the people who it's not are not Republicans anymore. And the people who are sticking around in the party are not the I shouldn't say Marco Rubio types, because Marco Rubio is a full Trump guy now. But like these are not like the Bill Kristol, the Mark Thyssen. This is a pundit who made the rounds, kind of pretty popular video over Twitter of him just saying, Trump needs to go. This is awful. He's dragging the party down. All the people that are saying that, like the Daily Wire, the Ron DeSantis faction of the Republican Party, they're a shrinking minority, and they are not going to be they're not going to be listened to, even though that they for the sake of the Republican Party in the long term, they probably almost certainly are right, but because of the rhetoric they have espoused for so long, it is just never going to happen, because they are, it's all about one thing. They built it up. The same people who are now trying to tear it down have built it back up, or spent the past, 5-6 years building it up, and now they're having a real tough time trying to, tear it back down when it gets out of control. And that kind of just threatens to topple all over them, which is really, really fascinating. My name is Spencer Walsh. This is the Spencer Walsh Radio Network, and if you're listening to one of our podcasts, whether it's Newsflash, Hidden History, The Spencer Walsh Show, or something else, ladies and gentlemen, we have one simple request of you. Please be sure to rate us, subscribe to us if you like us, and leave us a comment, because just like all of you, sometimes we need that feedback in our lives, good or bad. We want to hear what you have to say. So please do those steps, make SWR and content better, and thank you so much for listening. All right, ladies and gentlemen. All right, it's time to play kind of our, what's going to turn into our, daily game at this point is who will win the House in 2022. And it's really just kind of constantly changing. This was kind of 13 hours ago. This is 2 hours, and it's a really kind of a crazy situation. But still, the point is control of Congress is very much in limbo. And Americans are going to still, really definitely wondering. They're going to be still waiting, well into Friday here, recording this Friday at 6 o'clock. 3 days after the final ballots were cast in the 2022 midterm elections, more than 24 House races have not yet been called, with a number of them in California. And that is something that, is really, I've been seeing some of the clips going around with Tucker Carlson and all those people saying, it's an absolute disgrace what's been going on with our election system. It takes so long to count these ballots. But, it's really kind of insidious because they're right about the fact that, it's UK elections, pretty much everywhere, elections everywhere are counted anywhere from the course of one night to to like literally 2 or 3 hours, because they're all like massive populations, countries that we would pride, the average American would consider themselves, way, more institutionally sound than a country like Brazil, but they will get the results of an election in 3 hours after the polls close. And it's a federal election, and they will call every single local election below that in that time as well. So there's really no excuse for it. But the really insidious thing is the only people who are talking about it is the Republicans. And they're saying that they care. They're bringing up these points about, in Brazil it's different like this. In England it's like this. And, international people will say it too because they genuinely can't believe it. But what Republicans want to do is they want to sow doubt. They just want to, devalue, trust the, general electoral process, and their policies of, making it harder to vote, generally defunding the wheels of government, has just made it so that it takes so damn long to count these votes in these places. And a lot of it also, is mail-in ballots. In California, for example, that's, obviously not a Republican situation, but it's just an effort in this country that has kind of really been the same reason why, a lot of other countries, you barely even have to register to vote. It's so much easier. The access to the ballot is just so much easier. It's because they actually want the elections to run smoothly. That attitude in this country has just pervaded for so long, for a lot of reasons. A lot of them just being very, very racially tinged, to be the New York Times, to say the least, and understated a little. But as of Friday morning, Republicans have won 211 seats. Democrats won 197 and 27 races. 27 races remain uncalled. A party needs 218 seats to control the House. They're 7 seats away, the Republicans. So can they win the 7? That is a big question. They will have to... No, they definitely have better odds. They are up in right now, although, Lauren Boebert, they're up right now in the Boebert race, but that's believed to, flip soon. The Duarte race we talked about yesterday, all those same races. That Duarte, there's California 41 in Palm Desert in the Inland Empire area. That is also one that 53% of the vote only is in. So it's going to be a lot more to go in that one. So those two are, already looking kind of incredibly vulnerable there. Although it just seemed like, the most likely scenario is a 2-3 seat majority for the Democrats. So they're up to 14 seats. Take away, Republicans up or have won in 221 seats. To take away those maybe, 3 seats that I mentioned, the 2 in California and the Lauren Boebert seat, they're already at 218. So that's 218, 217 right there. And now all they need there is one other seat. And then so much could change. which is really quite incredible. So that kind of shows you, where things are in the moment and how close it's going to be. And it really just, all down to California in this point. Maybe the emphasis in that will finally get Gavin Newsom and the kind of vice-like grip that he has over that state to finally change things up. All right, let's move on to our last story, and that is with the Democrats. And, a big reason why they're not holding the House right now. So this is in The Intercept at this point. Against all odds, Democrats have, continue to have a plausible path to retaining the House majority, putting a microscope on strategic decisions made by party leaders in the final weeks of the campaign. The race may have even come down to a single seat, elevating the cost of the party of its underperformance in the home state of Representative Sean Patrick Maloney, Democrat of New York, the chair of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, whose high-profile bigfooting of a fellow Democrat ended with a surprise loss on Tuesday. It has also put a spotlight on this race in Oregon that could prove pivotal. That is the Jamie McLeod-Skinner race in the Oregon's 5th district, that one we didn't talk about because Lori Chavez DeRemer, is up by about 2% right now. It's the 5th congressional district in Oregon, stretching south and east from the Portland suburbs in Clackamas County to Deschutes County, which includes the rapidly growing and highly competitive city of Bend. So McLeod-Skinner made national headlines earlier this year for defeating 7-term incumbent Kurt Schrader in a fiercely contested primary. Her win, the only success an insurgent candidate notched against a Democratic incumbent in the cycle, was driven by a lopsided overperformance in Deschutes. Schrader has been a member of the so-called Unbreakable Nine, who organized against President Joe Biden's Build Back Better agenda and said in a private call with the dark money sponsors of their Operation No Labels that he hoped to kill it. National progressive groups, as well as most of the local Democratic Party operations, rallied behind McLeod-Skinner to knock out Schrader in May. And while the DCCC made an investment of just under $2 million in the race, they came off the air in the final few weeks in the leadership aligned Super PAC Political Action Committee, the House Majority PAC, literally run by Sean Patrick Maloney, someone who is very closely aligned to that Unbreakable Nine group, made the eyebrow-raising move to triage the race altogether. House Majority PAC Communications Director C.J. Warnke declined to explain the reasoning behind the move, but told The Intercept Friday that he had made the strategic decisions across the country to build the most optimal path to Democratic success this cycle. Our investments have made a major difference, he says, all across the state and more. So yeah, House Majority PAC, literally run by this guy, Maloney. And of course, the fiasco in the neighboring 6th congressional district, it has the House Majority PAC's fingerprints all over it. Yeah, so you got Oregon's 6th district, which essentially is, right next door to the 7th, or 5th, obviously. And that starts with the House Majority PAC as well. So there we got Andrea Salinas. She entered the general election bruised from an expensive primary contest in the nation. The most, after former, emphasis on former there, because that mother effer lost all his money in about the span of a weekend. So him and the House Majority PAC teamed up in an over $10 million failed attempt to anoint political newcomer and effective altruist Carrick Flynn as the nominee. Maybe that money, again, would have been spent better on malaria nets, effective altruists. That's what I thought, they were supposed to do, stay out of politics. The unorthodox partnership appeared to be the result of a quid pro quo as Bankman-Fried contemporaneously donated $6 million to the committee. House Majority PAC spent about $1 million on Flynn, ended up spending $3.25 million of helping Salinas win in the general election in a seat that was considered safe earlier in the cycle. So the DCCC spent about $1.75 million boosting Salinas. Bankman-Fried was worth billions of dollars, but now he appears broke. So how about that? Republicans, on the other hand, treated the race in Oregon's 5th district as the toss-up it clearly was. They spent nearly $8 million in total, spending that ballooned all the way through Election Day. That put Oregon's 5th in the top 20 when it came to spending by House Republicans, when McLeod-Skinner was near the bottom for Democrats when it came to competitive races. Republicans had more money to work with. Congressional Leadership Fund, the House Republican Super PAC, had some $250 million to parcel right around the country, while Democrats had about $140. The data just wasn't there in the race, argued one Democratic operative. Portland was an incredibly expensive media market. I don't know where you could have pulled the money from. Of course, the much cheaper Ben Media Market in the southeastern part of the district, where it was probably one of the most competitive areas of the race, also went untapped. Well, a handful of progressive organizations stepped in to alleviate some of the financial disparity, including a $1 million investment from the Working Families Party across the primary in general. Their limited resources meant McLeod Skinner, who had long declined support from corporate-funded PACs, is left with an outside spending deficit of over $5 million. The progressive groups who worked to close that gap had been sharp in their criticism, while they pumped last-minute money into the DCCC's chair's losing race in New York. Indivisible National Political Director Danny Negrete told The Intercept, Jamie has been holding on based on her strength as a candidate and her grassroots support. That's very, very interesting. I think very, very important. The party's underinvestment of McLeod Skinner, and I think it would be really an amazing story if she's able to hold on. It just shows you that they do not want these people, and they're willing to let Republicans, literally, they're willing to give up their House majority to not let these people in the Congress because they think that they will be bad. They think they're going to be worse than the Republicans. And that's why, when they come bitching to you, when they come moaning to you, oh, why didn't you vote for us? It's because they don't treat you with any respect. It's because they don't treat me with any respect. They don't treat what I believe with any respect. That's the reason why I did not vote for Sean Patrick Maloney, because he does not respect me. At a fundamental level, I'm not going to do something for someone that does not respect me, and this is a clear example of it. He would rather let a Republican in Oregon. Twice he would rather let a Republican in Oregon. Another great example of it is twice in Nebraska, Kara Eastman abandoned during her run against Don Bacon, and that is in the first district there. That was another competitive seat that was just flushed down the toilet because, again, they don't want anyone left of, I don't know, maybe Elizabeth Warren anywhere near power. That is intolerable to these people, and it is more intolerable than them having to sit on the sidelines for a year and fundraise off of all the bad stuff Republicans do, which is essentially what Democrats do when they lose power. So that is what is going on. That is what they think of you, really, really clearly. And it cannot be, I think it cannot be better, explained. So, despite the headwinds he faced earlier this year, Don Bacon trounced Democrat Tony Vargas, who ran with the blessing of the National Party by a margin nearly identical to the margin he beat Eastman in 2020, demonstrating that progressive antipathy is unworkable as either a short-term or long-term strategy if national Democrats hope to wield power rather than appease wealthy donors. But, again, we're seeing time and time again, they don't. They literally don't. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi suggested that Maloney should be lauded for his loss on the grounds that it enabled victory elsewhere across the map. Former presidential contender and current Representative Seth Moulton echoed the sentiment, declaring himself first on the list of Maloney fans for supposedly putting himself at risk for the sake of the party. Several of the Democratic seats that Republicans managed to pick up, including the Long Island-based 3rd and 4th District, which Biden won by 8 and 15 points respectively, saw less than $3 million in investment by the DCCC and House Majority PAC. Those figures greatly lag behind the over $4 million in spending Maloney was able to marshal from new outside PACs in his ill-fated quest to hold a seat that Biden won by over 10 points, according to a daily cost calculation. In Long Island, Democrats were also hurt by the retirement of Representative Tom Suozzi and the redistricting process ordered by the Court of Appeals, which pushed the primary back to September, giving Democrats only 2 months to campaign for the general election. Some races in California, where key elections hang in the balance, also saw Democrats outspent. And two particularly glaring examples: the party's National Committee invested $23,000 in a very, very tight seat for Christy Smith in the 25th, which is outside of L.A., and an underwhelming $204,000 in Jay Chen, two Democratic nominees who challenged a Republican in very slightly Democratic-leaning districts. Smith said she had a very narrow path remaining as more ballots continued to be counted, but she had no kind words for Washington Democrats. They did more than give up on me, she said, noting the DCCC recruited a candidate to run against her in the primary, despite her having lost in 2020 by fewer than 350 votes. With the party machinery behind John Quay Cordery, the Smith fundraising capacity was suppressed, and she blew through her millions of dollars to win the primary, entering the general broke. The National Party's preferred candidate won just 4,037 votes in the primary, which is really incredible in any primary ever. 4,000 votes, Jesus Christ. That was a waste of $1 million in donor money. He raised to get a single-digit result. $2 million in the Dem donor money wasted on a primary that they created, Smith said after that the party just gave up and walked away from the race. And in neighboring Arizona, Kirsten Engel, is defying expectations in her bid in the Tucson-based 6th congressional district after receiving over $70,000 in support from Democrats' national committees, a paltry sum against an opponent who received nearly $5 million in support from Republican groups. Both parties missed some of the close races. Nobody saw the challenge Democrat Adam Frisch would present to Lauren Boebert in Colorado, and in California's 41st, neither national party is invested in any serious way, with the race neck and neck, and many mail-in ballots still to be counted. But I think this is a really kind of valuable lesson for progressives. Time and time again, we see it. It's always there. You just want to, just yell it at people because they just do not understand. The fact is that literally they do not care. If someone who believes that, maybe the rich are paying more in tax, so we should have better social services, people who actually believe that, if they get anywhere near power, that is a worse outcome for people like Nancy Pelosi and Sean Patrick Maloney than having to sit on the sidelines with a Republican majority in the speakership. And on that note, we will actually be back next Tuesday. Thank you so much for listening. It's been Newsflash.